The gentlewoman yields.
Thank you, Speaker. I would yield 5 minutes this time to a member of the Joint Economic Committee for more than 6 years, the gentleman from Texas, Dr. Ron Paul. 5 minutes, please.
The gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
I thank the gentleman for yielding. Madam Chairman, I rise in opposition to this resolution. You know, they say so often that there's not enough bipartisanship around here. We hear that complaint a lot of time. But you know, when I look at it, I see that there's been too much bipartisanship in creating the problem we've had. And it hasn't been the last, this crisis that we're in the midst of, this financial crisis, didn't pop up here in the last 60 days. It didn't pop up here in the last 8 years. But it's taken several decades for us to get to this point where we are today, dealing with a budget that is just totally out of control and a monetary and economic system that is uncontrollable as well. It is said that this budget is going to be $3.6 trillion with a $1.1 trillion deficit. An amazing thing is that $1.1 trillion deficit is going to be $400 billion less than this year. I'll wait and see if that really comes out, because that probably won't work out that way. Matter of fact, characteristically, the statistics that we hear when we talk about the budget are never reliable, especially when you're in a recession. In a recession, nobody can predict the revenues. The revenues are going to be a lot lower, and the expenditures are going to be a lot higher. So I am making a prediction that the spending will be over $4 trillion this year, and that the deficit is going to be over $2 trillion. And that the picture that we are looking at today is much worse than we're willing to admit. Matter of fact, I think the problems we face today is not so much a budgetary problem. It's much different than that. I think we talk a lot about the budget, and just think how many hours we've talked about it today. But the budget and the deficit is a symptom of something much more serious, and that is, what have we allowed our government to become? I think it has been the loss of respect by us here in the Congress to understand and take seriously Article 1, Section 8. If we did that, we wouldn't be doing all these things that we're doing. If we understood the 10th Amendment, we wouldn't be doing all this. We wouldn't have a deficit. If we understood monetary policy, we wouldn't have a monetary system that encourages all this, that gets us off the hook. Because conservatives like to spend a lot of money, and liberals like to spend a lot of money, and they don't have to worry. We raise taxes, we borrow it, and we do it, and we've been doing it for decades and getting away with it, but it's coming to an end, because we've always been dependent on the Fed to come in and monetize the debt. Now, have they backed off in any way? No, they're expanding it. Not only do they buy in the market, they're buying it directly from the Treasury. They're only encouraging us to do even more of this. We have endorsed, as a Congress and as a people, a welfare warfare state. And that is not part of what America is supposed to be. And it encourages the spending and the borrowing and the deficits and all the inflation. And we take, for instance, we're supposed to get a lot of change with the new administration. One thing I was hoping about is that they might look at this overseas wild expending and the expansion of the war going on in the Middle East. But the military budget, the war budget, is going up 9%. And as long as we have the expansion of the war, the dependency of the spending overseas, we're spending over $1 trillion a year maintaining the world empire. At the same time, we have runaway spending here on welfare here at home. It is unsustainable. We have a debt that will not be paid. We know when it reaches a certain level, it cannot be paid. But it is always liquidated. Now, if an individual or a company goes into debt, it can be liquidated in the old-fashioned way of bankruptcy. Countries don't go bankrupt. What they do is they default on the debt. That doesn't mean they won't pay it. They pay it off in bad money. And literally, that is the purpose of the Federal Reserve right now, is to lower the real debt. So if you destroy 50% of the value of the dollar in the next year or two, the real debt has gone down 50%. Literally, the Federal Reserve Board is praying for, encouraging inflation to lower the real debt because it can't be sustained. But who does that hurt? It hurts the people who save. The people who save get 1% on their earnings, and we tax the little bit they get, and the people who are doing the right thing are being punished the most. So the ones who live beyond their means get bailed out. And it's a very bad system that we have, and we have to decide what the role of government ought to be. You know, we do blame the banks, we blame the business people and everybody, but you know, I have a lot of people who come to my office and they say, cut his, but don't cut my program. So we have to decide as a people, what should the role of government be? And if we think the role of government is going to be and should be the policeman of the world and to run the welfare state, this budgetary problem will never be solved.
Gentleman is recognized for 30 seconds.
I thank you for yielding. And let me just close by saying that the greatest danger I see right now is the placing of the blame for the crisis what we're in is that we had too much freedom. Too much capitalism, not enough regulation. And they did this in the 30s, they're doing it even more now. Instead of saying that we overspent, overtaxed, overregulated, we have lost our confidence, and if we don't change that attitude, and if we accept this notion, accept international regulation, believe me, we're in big trouble. We'll lose our freedoms, we'll lose our sovereignty as well.